What does healthy mean in the information age?
How long does it take to get to the ground up Kit Kat center of a Kit Kat bar?
Let's science it.
Secret avocado.
Hey, welcome to Nourishable. I'm Dr. Lara.
I'm Sam.
And this is Nutrition News Now. What has been going on in the nutrition news this week?
Ooh, Halloween has been going on this week.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, we are filming on November 1st, so you will see this after Halloween, but I pulled an all-nighter last night, so as far as my brain is concerned, it has just been one long continuous day, so it's still Halloween to me, damn it. But every year that Halloween happens, there seems to be this debate that kind of arises in the world of nutrition, and I think we can all kind of guess what that debate would probably be.
Added sugar?
In a way.
Okay.
It's more along the lines of like, how do we deal with these children getting access to all of this candy all at once, and how do we reconcile a kid's needs to chow down on all this good stuff versus their ultimate need of like needing to stay healthy. So first of all, just right off the bat, where do you kind of stand on the fence just like with that?
Well, I do feel like many food-centric holidays, such as Halloween, but also other food-centric holidays, that it is important to have these celebrations where we can enjoy special treats without guilt. I am a strong believer that guilt doesn't have any place attached to our food. So there's that. I do also feel the need to make sure that we keep those occasions as special treats and that they don't bleed into an all the time part of my daily habits or my frequent habits.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Do you have any because I know for me, especially when I was a kid, like my hunger for candy was like insatiable. Like if I could, I would eat all the candy with the wrapper still on. Like that's where we're talking.
Extra crunch.
I am made of glass bones and paper skin. So, do you have any advice as to how to manage these special celebrations and also in the aftermath of it stay on track as far as your health and dieting is concerned?
Okay, so that's a good question. We can look at this both from the kid perspective as well as from an adult perspective too, because I know I also personally enjoyed some Halloween trick-or-treating last night.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with the children first of all.
Okay. So first with the children, I guess. So again, I think it's kids get to enjoy their candy after they trick or treat for it. I think as far as expanding beyond the actual day of Halloween, perhaps there could be some techniques used to kind of limit the amount that can be consumed, but also be consumed with the focus of enjoying it. Because I think sometimes if we look at eating behaviors, we can see on one hand, a tendency to eat a whole bunch of candy as much as you can all at once, but you almost don't have the opportunity to taste it then. So I think if we could start to encourage children to develop the habit of really mindfully eating their food and really tasting it and enjoying it and noticing all the textures and flavors with it, that might help them enjoy their food right now more, but also can help you over your lifespan, enjoy indulgent food that, but feel satisfied with a smaller amount of it. Okay. And that can kind of perhaps balance the, wanting to eat these special treats, but also making sure you still have plenty of space in your diet to get the nutrient-dense foods while all kind of remaining within your calorie needs.
Okay, so what you're saying is that one day when I have a kid, I should make them spend 20 minutes chewing a Kit Kat bar?
That could be a fun experiment.
Because that sounds kind of fun.
Once. I think it could be pretty fun. Have you tried something like that before?
I never have, but I feel like I would hate candy afterwards, so maybe that's good. Maybe I should try that.
I admittedly haven't taken 20 minutes to eat a Kit Kat bar, but I know I've done an experiment where I tried, I took 2 minutes to eat an almond and really noticing all the textures of it, and it really can be a great way to focus on all the sensations that you're having while you're eating your food.
Okay, so is that the kind of advice, because this is for children right now, would you give that same kind of advice to adults, or does it kind of vary?
My first thought is that, yeah, I think that would be pretty applicable to adults as well. I'm trying to think if there's any reason that I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just going back to the idea of I don't want to associate guilt with food. I also find that if there's really, that with adults, if there's these really strict food rules, like I will never eat candy again, and if I do eat candy, I fail, that tends to fall in line with a lot of the reasons that a lot of diets and these really strict diets don't work, because people feel like that they're not following it perfectly, then they're failing at all of it. And instead, I think it's much healthier to have a bit more of a resilient, flexible approach of here are my habits, 90% of the time, for example. But then that gives you some leeway to indulge and enjoy and not feel bad about it.
Okay, so basically moderation is key. Moderation is your best friend.
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay, good stuff. So I do have kind of a larger point with it, but before we get to it, I want to get to the next thing because it kind of ties both topics together. The second one is not necessarily a news story, but I did find a news story that kind of sparked this. And what it was an article called "How Fast Do You Have to Walk for It to Count as Cardio?" Now, when I saw that, admittedly, I did giggle a little bit because I saw that title and I was like, oh my God, what a mood. Like, if someone were to be like, hey, you need to get your cardio, do a jog down the block or like run on the treadmill for a while, my first instinct would be to go, can't I just like walk really fast or something? So that's what made this stick out in my mind. The article itself is actually very helpful as far as information is concerned, but the reason it got me is because it spoke to me as part of this rising culture birthed from like the social media internet age of like getting things quick and easy. And it's kind of bled into dieting and exercise a little bit to where you've heard of life hacks, right?
Yes.
Okay. How do you feel about life hacks in regard to nutrition and diet and exercise and how those two kind of come together?
Okay, I mean, I think in general, I really view the kind of this terminology of life hacks as being like, here are some tips for healthy living in our busy life. Mm-hmm. And so I view that as, I think that's pretty good. I think that we can always use little bits of advice that can help make healthier living an easier, more sustainable choice. Sustainable meaning that we can actually stick with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what it's kind of given rise to, for at least from what I've been able to see and what I've observed over the years, is that it's also given way to a subsection of this life hack content to where they make crazy claims of like, lose all this weight, get in shape real quick without having to do exercise, without having to do the dieting. And it's kind of given rise to a lot of misinformation surrounding health and nutrition. And given how fluid and how ever-changing nutrition science is, it seems like something that is ultimately super detrimental in the long run. So my ultimate question with all of this, kind of tie everything together, is in the age of social media, getting everything, the headline era, where everyone's attention span is super short, you only have a minimal amount of space and time to get their attention, and unfortunately it leads to a lot of misinformation. How does one navigate through all of that, kind of finding conflicting information and making sense of all of it?
Great question. So there's a few things that I would say, like, as a news consumer, that you can use to try and kind of train your spidey sense a little bit for sensing if something is kind of evidence-based or if it's really kind of part of these like over extrapolated claims. And so the first one would be when you notice any really extreme language, like the one thing you've missed out in, the one thing you're doing that would actually kill you, or anything that's really extreme like that, or the terminology like that would be something I would watch out for. I would also watch out for a lot of really causational language, so saying that one thing causes something else. Often scientists will speak in in more qualified language, or we'll talk about things that like associations or increased or decreased risk, terminology like that. And the other thing that I find too is that like science really builds up over time. So if you're seeing just one report of something that is really different from everything else, that's also another way that you should look at it and think, I don't know if I'm convinced or not.
Okay.
And then I think the other thing too is like read past the headline. So, some articles will then go on and describe if it's a particular study that they're referring to. And so, make sure you read that and also try and get a sense of how well are they describing the study. Did they talk about like who the study is in? Like, is it a study in animals? Is it a study in humans? Is it a study in cells in a dish? If it is in humans, how many humans? So some of those are important questions to get a sense of, was this kind of a one-off study, or is this reflective of a larger body of literature?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason this ties back to the Halloween thing is because I looked through many articles to try and get a sense of what the debate looks like to try and come to some sort of stance on it. But the only thing I could notice was that there was a lot of information, some of it seemed sketchy, and at least like 5 of the articles that I looked through started with none of this blah 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 that you see in that article or this article, none of that. And it's when you do the research and you've kind of delve into the topic a little bit, it's easy to see how much information can get spread into how many different corners.
And I think something building on that as well is I feel like you're talking about how like articles will be referring to each other but calling them out. And so another thing to look at when as a news consumer is getting a sense of the references. What kind of material are they referencing? Are they referencing, as you said, like other articles that are maybe blog posts or versus are they referencing scientific studies or statements from organizations like the American Heart Association or like health organizations. So I find I have more trust in and I really require having some of these higher quality references as opposed to other blogs and less formal media.
Absolutely. That's great. And another thing, look at the author. Look at who the author is. If it is Joe from down the street who works at a coffee shop, don't let him tell you how to run your body. Your body is a temple, and that guy ain't no monk.
Well, and I think going on that, sometimes looking at credentials too.
Yeah, there you go.
Credentials can be important
are key
as well. So I find when I'm reviewing nutrition literature, I really like seeing some credentials like RDN, which stands for Registered Dietetics Nutritionist, or also PhDs are great. MDs have some nutrition training, not always a lot, but some have more than others. Medical doctors.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's something else that I think kind of fall within your toolkit of being a news consumer.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Absolutely.
So I was wondering, how would you define healthy food?
How would I define a healthy food? I would define healthy food as its consequences, or the positive consequences outweigh the negative consequences.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about consequences, what kind of consequences do you feel like you're first thinking of?
The first thought is like long-term disease. The second thought is like how it affects your body and like ravages your stomach immediately or that kind of thing.
Okay, so I see.
Yeah, generally long-term.
Generally long-term. Okay, that's really interesting to me. The reason I ask is because the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, has published a proposed ruling to redefine the meaning of healthy. And this is specifically in the context of when a food package can use the word healthy on their label.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, so this is
Okay.
like they are proposing to redefine the actual legal definition of healthy food.
Okay. What would they redefine it to? Has that kind of...
Great question. So the original, if we want to call it like the, healthy 1.0, like original healthy definition, was created back in the 1990s. And it was a definition that was very nutrient focused. So in order for a food to be defined as healthy, it had to have limits on certain kind of negative nutrients. So, and those specifically were total fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, and sodium. And then it had to have at least at least a certain threshold of one of the nutrients to encourage, which they included as vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, iron, protein, and dietary fiber.
Okay, 1990 seemed a little late to define what healthy meant, but then I realized that doctors were like recommending cigarettes in the 60s, so I mean, we've been treating our bodies like trash for decades.
That is a really good point. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it is kind of, 90s is pretty late. But still, in many ways, the 90s was a long time ago.
That is true.
So nutrition science has evolved, and now the new proposed definition for healthy takes a bit of a different focus.
Okay.
Where now they are using more of a food group based focus along with nutrients to limit. So now in order for a food to be defined as healthy, it has to contain at least one serving of a food group that is encouraged to consume according to the dietary guidelines. So that would be fruits, vegetables, whole grains, dairy, or protein. So it has to have at least one serving of one of those food groups. And it can't have above a certain threshold of 3 nutrients that people tend to eat too much of. So those being added sugar, saturated fat, and sodium.
Okay.
So that's kind of where now it's this new definition, or new proposed definition of healthy.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, so were you just reaching for something?
Maybe. We'll continue.
Oh God, okay. All right, I'm hype. We had a game show last time. I'm hype. But, so I am the average consumer. When I see healthy foods, I don't know the official legal definition. I just see, oh, look, it says it's healthy. With this definition change, do you see, I mean, there has to be some positives to come out of it, but do you also see any negative repercussions that could come out of it?
Well, there could be some negative repercussions. And one of them actually relates back to kind of the question I asked you about how would you define healthy. And this really opens up the whole idea that there's many different ways of defining healthy depending on what context we're looking at. So your focus, and frankly most of the time my focus as well, is what are the health impacts on my personal health? How would this food impact my personal health? But there's other ways of looking at healthy, how about the health of the environment? How does this food fit within the overall health and sustainability of the environment? So that could be one repercussion. Something else too, I think, is that right now this is a proposed definition by the FDA. And so if you really get into the weeds, they're kind of saying, look, this is how we're proposing to define it, but we have a few questions. And so one of the areas where I think it could be a little controversial is that right now, in order to be defined, with this new proposed ruling to be defined healthy for dairy products, they have to be low fat. They can't be full fat. And I think that's a little bit controversial. Because there has been some evidence showing that people who do consume full-fat dairy in particular, that they have lower disease risk, smaller waist circumference, and maybe it has something to do with the specific types of fat that are in dairy. So those, I say, would be 2 examples of times when I could see that maybe there could be a detriment in kind of classifying things as healthy or not healthy.
Okay. Got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, do you think that a healthy label on food, would that help you choose food? Would it help you navigate a grocery store? Or do you think, or would you ignore it? Do you think it would be useful at all?
I mean, if I'm going to a grocery store and I'm looking specifically for healthier alternatives to what I do usually eat, then I'm probably going to be looking for labels like that and kind of direction as to where I could possibly go.
Mm-hmm. So you do feel like it could be a useful tool.
I think so.
And that's good, because the reason that this would be used at all is to help empower consumers in making healthier choices. That was good. Right. I do have a little game.
Laptop shutting.
Okay, so I gotta say this is less of a game and more of a demonstration.
Okay.
So we have talked about how the definition of healthy is being redefined. So some foods that qualified as healthy based on the 1990s definition would no longer qualify as being healthy by this new proposed definition. Here is one example. So this is some oatmeal, but it's flavored oatmeal, and it includes added sugar. So the new definition of healthy has limits on how much added sugar, and this cereal has too much added sugar to be qualified as healthy.
Oh my God, you lied to us. You lied to us, Quaker.
But still, I mean, I would consider oatmeal would qualify as a healthy choice. It's just the amount of added sugar in this one. So you could hypothetically be standing there in the grocery store and looking at many different options of oatmeal and see some that say healthy and some that say don't, or some that don't have a label on them at all. And then perhaps that could help guide you.
Okay, so you didn't lie to us. You just got the short end of the stick. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snap at you. That was my bad.
Okay, here is something else that would previously have not been defined as healthy, but would now be defined as healthy.
Just watched you pull a rabbit out of a hat.
I store secret avocados everywhere.
Oh my God, what? Oh my God, there's one in my back pocket. How did you do that?
So this avocado, first of all, under the new proposed definition, all whole raw fruits and vegetables would qualify as healthy.
Okay, great.
Plus, previously an avocado wouldn't have qualified as healthy because it has too much fat in it. Because the previous 1990s definition had limits on total fat. Whereas, I don't know if you noticed this like nuanced shift from the previous definition had restrictions on the amount of total fat. The new definition would only have restrictions on saturated fat.
Okay.
And that's because as nutrition science has evolved, we really have a better understanding that, the quality of the fat matters. And so it's really the saturated fat that we want to limit, but having the more monounsaturated fats like this avocado is very healthy.
Okay. And kind of just going off this seems like a definition, the healthy definition, that could very well change again in another 3 decades.
Great question. Yes, absolutely. It could. Now, would that make you trust nutrition science more or less? The fact that the definition of something as seemingly simple as healthy can change.
So, I mean, on the surface, yeah, but I mean, you just got to think about it for 2 seconds and remember that science is a very fluid, hypothesis-based field. So we're going to be learning new things all the time. Things are going to be changing all the time. The way we perceive the world is going to change all the time. So it's just a matter of remembering that, like, we're just going to be getting the same thing from nutrition science.
Right. You know? Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree. Absolutely. I have one more thing I want to pull out.
All right.
This is another one.
Rabbit? Oh. Aha.
An egg.
Like a specific type of egg or just like egg?
Any egg.
Any egg at all.
The previous definition, an egg would not have qualified as healthy. So in the 1990s, they said limit dietary cholesterol in order to be considered healthy. The current new proposed definition doesn't say anything about dietary cholesterol, which is also a reflection on the evolution of nutrition science, where we have found that it seems to be more the saturated fat that is driving up your blood cholesterol levels as opposed to the cholesterol in food.
Okay.
So.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Huh. Now, one other question I have for you is, so we've talked about this idea that nutrition science can evolve over time, and so therefore it kind of makes sense that our definition of healthy would change. Right now, this is a proposed ruling by the FDA, and it is open for public comment. So from now all the way up to December 28th, I believe, there's the opportunity for the public, just like you, or food companies, or organizations like American Society of Nutrition that I'm part of. This is their opportunity to comment on the proposed ruling and say, I agree with this, or I don't agree with this. The fact that different stakeholders have the opportunity to contribute to what perhaps becomes the new definition of healthy, how does that make you feel? Does that make you trust it more or less?
Well, I do have some alarm bells going off in my head because there are very much going to be food companies and food groups that have their own special interests and their own profits at heart that would might try to push it a certain direction so they can boost their own image and thus profit off of it more.
Yeah.
That's where, yikes. But I think it's a very fluid thing, so you've almost got to kind of take everything into account if we're going to develop this new definition for it. So I'm a little torn on it, but I guess I'll just kind of watch it play out and hope it don't go nowhere bad.
Yeah, I think so. I am actually very similar to you in that I agree that there could be negatives if certain special interests are really pushing for one thing. And sometimes I know within the dietary guidelines there's been some pushback about certain lobbyists or the dairy lobby, the meat lobby, seeming like they have more of a role in what happens in the dietary guidelines. But I also feel that it's very strongly that science is collaborative, and so the more voices that can be integrated into the definition of something like healthy, I think the better the definition will be because it's been looked at from so many perspectives.
Yeah. So I guess you got to kind of take everything into account, figure out what to look at, what not to look at, and bring it all together into this smaller world, I guess. So in other words, you've kind of got to moderate it.
Yes.
In other words, moderation is key.
Moderation is key.
And that is the theme of the day.
That is very much the theme of the day.
There's our title, Moderation is Key.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this week, Sam.
Thank you so much for having me again.
And that's what's... That's not what I'm gonna say yet.
No, we're not tasting it just yet. We got some business to take care of first.
Yes. If you want to read the references that we have talked about today, they are in the video description.
And if you have a story that you want to send us, find us on our social media, which will also be linked in the description. Send it to us. We will look it over. We will talk about it.
That's what science tastes like.
Doesn't it taste frightening? We're filming this after Halloween. We've dated ourselves, right? When you said meat lobby, the only thing I could think was, is there a meat hotel? That sounds disgusting.
What would that look like?
I don't know, but I want to find out.